Good to have you on board. Good to finally actually fucking join up here.
Yeah.
A joint effort between the Heat Locker and what's the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Is that the official? Am I saying that right?
That's the official name, mate. It's not, nothing to do with mental issues, I can tell you. It's just people assume that that's what the YouTube channel was called. So I just went ahead and did that for the podcast because kind of just, make it easy for people to remember.
Yeah, man. I like it. Well, today's going to be a collaboration, a joining of the two. This will be the first time for that for me, for the Heat Locker.
Yeah. And I mean, starting off, it's not the first time we have joined up. We've done some commentary together on the Gladiators show. And also I was lucky enough to actually train under you back in, it's got to be like 2015, or when did your gym open up out at Sydney West?
Yeah, so we've got Sydney West Martial Arts. We opened 2014. So 2014, we opened up in about June, and I got a feeling you came to us either late that year or early the next year. I actually forget the actual timings, but you were still a brown belt at the time, Sonny. Yep. You're now a well-established black belt. I think was I black belt, or did I still have a brown belt? I don't know. I
think you may have been brown as well.
May have been a brown belt because I got my black the end of 14. What are we in? No, end of. Good question. End of 14, I'm sure it was. Was it 15? Jesus, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think maybe I had my purple when I started, and then there was the end of year rollover, and I got to brown at that time, I think. But I mean, that was good. It was good training. I was very lucky to have that connection with the Machado lineage. That when I moved out to Penrith. And Anthony said, check out Luke Martin.
But look, if I'm being totally honest there, I was rubbish. Like I was slightly better than your average guy, but I was still rubbish on the big scale of things. Like, and I didn't realize how rubbish I was. That's the thing, and that's what. Sorry to go on this little rant already, but a lot of people don't realize how rubbish they are, and I don't mean that with any disrespect because I was in exactly the same boat. And when I say rubbish, I'm not saying you don't know jiu-jitsu. I'm just saying it's a different. You don't understand the ruler you're measuring against. You think is a 1 meter ruler, but it's actually a 20 meter ruler. You think you're up towards the end of the 1 meter mark, and you realize actually the meter doesn't end there; it keeps going. That's not the best analogy, but it's kind of like you don't know that there's more to it.
Yeah, well, I remember at the time you're very keen on leg locks before the kind of current wave had set in, and even we had that seminar out there with Dean Lister.
OG.
Yeah. You were pumped for that. I was pumped for that, and that was really good. A funny thing that stood out for me with that seminar was when he got the laptop out to show the highlights of his victories. You remember that?
I think he was trying to impress a few of the girls in the room.
Well, he was trying to say look, my stuff works.
Yep. Yeah. Sure.
That I'm showing, and I felt that. Well, we know that. That's why That's why we've paid money to come see you.
He's a cool dude.
We're well aware.
He's a cool dude. He's such a character, Dean Lister. Like, he's if you've had any chance to actually sit down, so I got a chance after that to spend a bit of time with him, and I drove him to the airport the next day and did all that stuff. So I got a chance to actually talk with him, and he's a wild man. He's a legitimate fighter. He's not just your average smart jiu-jitsu nerd like some of these guys that that we come across now. He's like a legitimate fighter who's also was like a OG in jiu-jitsu and particularly in leg locking. But it's like comparing, and this is no disrespect to Lister. Lister is one of my favorite guys because he was a guy doing something I was into at such a embryonic stage.
Yep.
He was doing it early in the piece when there wasn't all these guys that are around now, but it's like comparing an old Commodore 64 to a new computer nowadays. It's not really very fair. They're two different things. It's that much difference as well.
Yeah, so that's like since then, and I think at that stage there wasn't the Danaher DVDs weren't out, obviously, and there wasn't that much stuff out there on that at that time. You know, Lister was still kind of the man for leg locks when he when he did that seminar, and you were interested in that. But since then, obviously, you know, the Danaher guys have come on the scene, and you were well placed to, pick up their style, pick up their methods, because you were already spending so much time with leg locks. And now it seems like since then you've obviously traveled overseas, but to train with Danaher himself. But like, what was it for you that took you down that path?
The path of leg locks or the path of Danaher?
Let's start with leg locks to begin with, because I think that kind of leads into the getting to Danaher.
Yeah, I don't know. So I started getting into leg locks as a blue belt. So that was about 2007, I want to say, around then. And as you know, you've been around for a long time too. There wasn't as much access to information, so you didn't know. You didn't know there was this guy doing this and that. It was kind of like everyone was just stuck in their own little academy. You kind of knew there was a couple of these world champions. You knew Marcelo Garcia. But I wasn't like immersed in knowing every jiu-jitsu player, because it just wasn't as easy to follow. So I kind of just was training. I liked grappling, and I think I sucked at passing maybe. And like most leg lockers start out that way, they suck at passing, so they start just sitting back on legs. And I don't know. For me, it just felt like here's another option to submit somebody. I was just trying to work out how to submit people, and I thought, well, it's just why not jump on their legs? They're just there. I'm trying to pass. Their legs are there. Why not? So it kind of just was a matter of that. I wasn't any sort of, it wasn't like I had this idea no one else had. I just started doing this thing that I thought, well, they're in front of me. I think that's probably where most people start with the leg locking. And I put a big emphasis on my academy now, where I'm like, guys, I do not want you ever to be known as somebody who can't pass the guard, and you're doing this. Like, things have moved well and truly past that nowadays. Yep. But in the beginning, I think that's where it kind of started. It was like, fuck, I can't get, I'll just jump on his leg and try and make something. And, his level of understanding of defensive procedures are probably so small, and my little bit of understanding of trying to just crank on his foot and, I got a submission. But I can't say nothing I was doing was good. It was all absolute rubbish. But it was just that my rubbish was better than their rubbish defense. So, I got a submission. But I'm very open when I look at my training, and I think you should be. Any practitioner should be. I'm very honest with myself. Like, I'll still film my rounds and watch back and go, fuck, that's rubbish. Should have had that. And I think that's probably a good thing to do. So I'm very, very harsh on myself back then. But that's where it started. So then I started to, because I was always into mixed martial arts. That's my real passion. I enjoy watching mixed martial arts. We kind of went through that same pattern, and then there was a couple of guys getting around that were doing MMA. There was obviously Huzama Palhares. So I'm like, I'd watch Palhares' fights, and I'm just like, fuck, here's a guy doing this stuff that I've been into. He's doing it in fights. He's doing it. And he was at one stage where I thought he might have actually been a legitimate champion. I thought he might have been maybe a welterweight champion or middleweight champion. And I thought, this guy's just going to tear everyone's leg off. And he kind of did that for a bit until he got himself kicked out. But, definitely it was just something that kept coming back to me as an interesting. I'm like, this is super cool, and it's a part of the game people aren't doing. And I've always been attracted to something. If there's something someone else isn't doing, it's like, if that's something that I see some value in, well, here's an avenue that's not it's not the beaten path, but eventually it might be. And I'm kind of like, yes, not lucky, but it obviously has become now. It's like, maybe it's even had its thing. It's so popular. Yeah. Over the last probably 4 years or so. So I'm kind of in a position where I've been doing this for a little while, so I'm a little bit ahead of the game. But it would have been no good me relying back on the leg locks from 2008 that I was doing, because it's, like I said, it's pure rubbish. So you have to continue to upskill. So that's kind of where it got to the point where I'm watching a few of these leg lock guys. I'm watching Lister, and I'm watching, just trying to watch YouTube stuff. And it was very difficult, because back, I feel like YouTube was barely even a good thing back then. There wasn't as much content as there is now. Yeah. You couldn't just go and watch everything. And then I started watching EBI, and I was like, EBI really interested me, because it was a form of submission grappling where these guys were doing something different. The matches were about trying to submit each other. The matches weren't. They just seemed like a different thing, and I don't need to go through that. I think people probably know that already, that it was a more of a pure thing. Guys were trying to win. There was money, so it was like if they can submit a guy, they were getting more money, and that obviously promotes guys to try to finish more than just win by maybe an advantage or a point or something. Mm-hmm. And that's where I started seeing Gary Tonin, and I started seeing this form of grappling that was different to what I'd seen, and definitely different to what the rest of us seen. And I'm, rather than being like a guy who could be kind of like, fuck those guys, it's a different type of thing, my coach's thing is what we should be doing. There's a lot of guys that are very kind of bullish in that regard. I was like, no, I think this is something to this. And I'd heard some good stuff about Danaher. Like he wasn't a big name at that stage, but because I was into MMA, I knew Danaher through George St. Pierre. And obviously George was maybe one of the best grapplers of mixed martial arts. Like still to this day, it's hard to go against him.
Hard to argue against that.
Yeah, and he was a guy who did all his training under John Danaher, or by extension under Faraz Zahabi, who is a John Danaher black belt. So I was like, okay, everything's leading towards this direction. So, but jiu-jitsu for me was still just a hobby. It was something I was just doing on the side. So once I started doing it as an actual career, once it became a thing where it's like, I want to be able to give my students the best possible information. I don't want to just regurgitate some old stuff I'd been taught. I wasn't happy with that. I want to give them the best. I want to know that I'm giving them absolutely everything I could possibly give them. So I think it was 2016 or 2017. I was in a position financially where I could finally afford, because obviously gyms don't make a lot of money, particularly in the beginning. And I finally got to a point where like, okay, I think I can do this. And I did it. I made that first pilgrimage over to New York. I didn't know anybody. So obviously I decided I'd split my time between Marcelo's and between Renzo's. Mm-hmm. So I went over there, and that made sense. That made sense to me. It's like Marcelo Garcia is the best in the world. I'd followed his MG online. If you've seen any of his stuff, like there was lots of good stuff, and I'm like, this is great. So I split my time between the two, and it was very interesting. Two academies, both with very high level guys, but just how different they were between the type of jiu-jitsu they were doing, and even just the academy itself. You know, like you go to Marcelo's, and Marcelo's like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's probably the best grappler of all time. Definitely, you can make the argument that Gordon's probably now a better submission grappler. But, Marcelo, for most people, he's definitely right up there. And he's just the best guy, like so cool. Every day I'd walk in the academy and be like, hey, Luke, how you going? Like, and I'm like, this is Marcelo Garcia, and he's saying hi to me. And so I really enjoyed that. But every time I went to Renzo's, I just got fucking raped, like I'd never felt before. Like I couldn't stop it. They were doing this shit. At Marcelo's, like the guys like Jonathan Sativa and Gianni Grippo and Mateus Diniz, like they were definitely good, but I knew what they were doing to me. It was like heavy passing style, and it was like Gianni like worked some bolo stuff, but I kind of knew what was going on. But at Renzo's, it was like fucking dark arts. I was like, I've never experienced this control and this ability to get to a finish before. And that was really appealing to me. And then once you sit in on a Danaher class and you sit in front of the guy, you can get a little bit taken away with just his ability to impart information. He's like, I've never been to uni, but I feel like he's like a really good, high-quality lecturer, like a guy that just knows his stuff but knows how to impart that knowledge like no one I've ever seen. And so by the end of that fortnight, I'd pretty much decided I could see the direction I wanted to go. Then it was actually quite frustrating because I'd seen what I wanted now, but I'm like, how do I turn my academy from me just being a brown belt, out in Sydney, to trying to follow this direction, because the DVDs hadn't even come out yet either. Yeah. So I was still like, I'm just going to have to try and get this information. I'd been watching, before I went there, I'd been watching EBIs in slow-mo, watching like a Gary Tonin match in slow-mo. So it'd take 40 minutes for a 10-minute match, and trying to work out, okay, so he set up that, why did he do that? And, it's very difficult to reverse engineer like that, but it was the best I could do. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get to a workable level? But these guys got John Danaher, they're all pushing each other, and I'm going to go back home and try and come up with something. So I'm actually very happy with where I've got from that moment in time, probably in early 2017 to now midway through 2020 or early 2020, being at the level we're at. Like, I feel like we've really got somewhere. And, the main reason for that is a guy called Jason Rao. And I think you wanted to ask me about him.
Yeah, definitely. Because, on a few of those things, I've been out there to train with you a few times recently, and I've definitely felt you've put in a lot of work, and your students as well. I could tell rolling with them that they've taken a lot of that knowledge in, especially to the point where you're definitely not just leg locking or anything anymore. It's certainly the whole system that you've been able to work, and yeah. So I know that you've made a connection with Jason Rao, and I remember at the time it was still before the DVDs had come out, and you'd mentioned that you were taking private lessons from him over Skype, and you were kind of like, oh, still don't know at the time if that's cool or not. Obviously things have changed now, but it was you're the first person that I've heard of actually doing that, and it's obviously a big step to do that, to get that from the top of the food chain type information. So, I mean, how did you come into contact with Jason Rao, and what set that up?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for the praise. I appreciate that. That's what I want. What I want is what I experienced when I went into Henzo's that first day. I don't expect people to experience the same thing, because obviously he's got a room full of guys he's been working with for longer, and John Danaher is the best coach in the world. But I kind of want them to get a pseudo version of that experience. I want it to be where they come in and go, this is a different thing. We've all done jiu-jitsu. This is a different thing. They're submitting me. They're chaining things together. And like you said, you come in thinking they're just going to be leg locking. But as soon as you try to, worry about a leg lock, then next thing you're getting arm locked or kimura or back taken and past, and it's that constant marauding style where you just don't know where the next attack's coming from, that something eventually catches you, and that's what's attracted me. And I think that's also what keeps me having such a high passion for this. Like, my passion hasn't dwindled whatsoever. If anything, it's gaining fire every day, and just because I realize there's so much more, and I don't mean that like someone standing out, getting their belt and giving that fucking corny speech about, oh, I'm a black belt now, I'm going to go into learning all this bullshit. Like, I'm telling you legitimately, like, I can see what's there in front of me and the level I want to get to and the level I want my students to get to. And that's what has like a burning fucking desire inside me. And Jason Rao is really, him and John Danaher are the reasons, right? Obviously, John Danaher is kind of the root of all this, because it's his mastermind that spawned all these crazy motherfuckers over there like Jason. Jason was always going to be brilliant, but Jason getting that touch of John Danaher, and I've had this conversation with him a few times. If you go back to one of the latest podcasts I did with Jason in New York, we talk about John's influence and the way he gets guys thinking in a certain way. And he definitely did that with Rao, who then has just run with that, he's a brilliant guy. But it was really quite lucky. I don't believe in luck. I kind of, because I think you make your own luck, but it was still a bit lucky. I hit him up on Instagram when I went over the first time. So before I went over the first time, I'm watching EBIs and I'm seeing him do reverse De La Riva. I'm thinking, that looks like a guard I need to add. It looks like a guard that'll work well with what we're doing. But I didn't know anyone. No one was using it here. I didn't know anyone that could teach it to me, especially for no gi. Like, there's guys using De La Riva in the gi, but not as much reverse. Like, reverse De La Riva was a little bit Kayatera, but it's hard to get a whole lot. Anyway, I found Jason Rao's instructional. And if anyone wants to buy it, it's on Digitsu. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend all his stuff. None of his stuff is overly heavily priced, but the information is as good as you'll get from Gordon Ryan. Like, it's phenomenal. Anyway, so I jump on there. I get this thing for like $20 or something. It wasn't much money. And I start learning reverse De La Riva, and I'm like, okay, that was really cool. And they kind of like upped the level of my game. It upped the level of my students. And I just contacted him on Instagram. I'm like, man, I just got you instructional. It was awesome. And he was like, oh, straight back to me. That's awesome, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of just made that contact. And then when I was heading out, I just hit him up again. I said, look, I'm coming to train. Any chance we can just catch up? I wasn't trying to fanboy him. I don't do anything like that, but I just thought, I kind of know this guy. I'll just see him in the training room. And it just turns out Jason and I are actually very similar people, and we kind of hit it off this day, started chatting, did the AM session at Henzo's, and then chatted kind of in between and went and got a coffee and whatever. And then from there, we've, been in contact every week since then, since like the last 3+ years, or around 3 years, I should say, probably. Yeah. So anyway, so I get that initial dose of Henzo Gracie Academy, and I'm like, fuck, this is so good, but I can't just go home and then go back in another. My initial plan was every 2 years, every year and a half. It's quite expensive. New York's probably the most expensive place in the world to travel to. There's the flights are expensive, the accommodation, everything's against you. So I'm thinking, this is not going to work. Me going there every 2 years. I mean, let's be realistic. For 2 weeks, what am I going to get? Like, I'm going to get a little bit, and that's the thing. Nowadays, you talk to people and they go, "Oh, my buddy went to Henzo's. This guy went to Henzo's." Yeah, just because he went to Henzo's for a week doesn't mean he's not doesn't know leg locks. He doesn't know. Yeah. He doesn't. And I'm not saying that as a diss on people. If you can go, great. But just because someone goes to Henzo's doesn't mean they're now. I get you. You
can't just have a tourist holiday somewhere and pick up everything.
And that's kind of a little bit of a thing. Oh, yeah, this guy's been to Henzo's and there's like a small crew of Australians who actually really have been there a fair bit and kind of know what's going on. And I probably know who most of those guys are, So anyway, so I'm thinking, how are we going to get around this? So I said to Jace, I said, what do you reckon if we could do FaceTime privates? And he said, I don't know. I haven't done anything like that before, but maybe my Siri's listening to me. She's listening. Stop listening to me.
They're all listening.
She's playing a song now. Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Fucking hell. Anyway, so yeah, he goes, look, I've never done that before, but let's give it a go. We'll just see what happens. Yep. And yeah, we set it up, but it kind of took a little bit to get in the groove. And it's funny because like in the current climate, for people listening to us right now, we're right in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone's locked in their houses. Every man and his dog's now putting on Instagram, oh, if you want to do privates with me.
Exactly.
But I'm kind of like, guys, I've been doing this for a bit.
Yeah.
And but it was tricky, right? Because even with private lessons, if you just do a private lesson once a month, once every 2 months, you're going to get a little bit, but you're just getting spatterings of information. There's only so much. It's the same as going to a seminar, right? Yep. Seminars are fun. Seminars are good. You pick up a few moves, but they're not going to give you a whole game or a whole system. And you probably agree with me, Sonny. You've been to a lot of different stuff. And I'm not saying don't go to seminars, but I'm saying for me to get my end goal was to have a thorough understanding of what those guys were doing and try to replicate that with my team. That was my goal. So I knew I couldn't do that just with a couple of random privates. So I had to go all in. It was either all or nothing with this. So I went all in with it. So it became a business expense where I had to be able to put aside. And this is the thing, a lot of people aren't willing to spend money because there's no direct avenue for income back for that. Like I could run the academy and teach just standard jiu-jitsu that I learned, up until black belt. And that would keep the people coming through the doors, new white belts would come in, all that would be fine. But that's not how I operate. Like anything I do, and anyone that knows me will tell you this, I only want the very best. And if I can't have the best, I'm not willing to just settle. I would rather have nothing. And I'm the same with that with my jiu-jitsu, right? So once I saw what I wanted to have and when I saw that quality and felt that quality, everything became about trying to understand that and get to a point where I not that I could do the techniques, but that I could understand it enough to get a whole team of guys to do it. It wasn't about me. See, a lot of guys are about themselves becoming a good athlete, and that's perfectly fine if your goal is to be the next ADCC champion, worry about you as an individual. But for me, it was trying to upskill as the best, my end game. And this is not like a competition thing, but my end game is to try and be one of the most respected coaches in Australia. Like that's a legitimate goal of mine as a coach. Not because I want to be big noted, but just I want to be I'm dedicating myself 100%. It's like if I was a surgeon, I would want to be the best surgeon. That would be just how I operate. You're probably the same sort of way. Like, I don't just aim to go, I'm just happy to be a surgeon, just be the middle of the run. Like, I would want to be the guy that, had the cutting edge techniques. And it's the same with what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So that's where all this has led to, and this obsession. And then it just rolled from there. And initially it was like I could only afford to do once every fortnight. And then it was like, fuck, I had even more questions to ask. And I'm like texting him during the week, and he'd write back, and I'm like, we got to do this every week. So then, like, by the end of it, like, Jason and I are doing a face-to-face, or when I say face-to-face, basically like, we're doing here once a week, but then I'm texting him between, I'm sending him training videos. He's getting back to me. I'm like, what about this position? He's like, yeah. And now we've got to a point where we're, bouncing stuff to each other, and it's phenomenal. Like, it got to a point where it all went from just being a bunch of moves I was trying to remember to becoming like this overall system that plugged together. And I know that I don't like how that gets thrown around nowadays. Everything's a system. Everyone's got their own DVD with a system now. Go fuck yourself. Like, no one had a system before. No one ever talked about systems before. Danaher created legitimate systems. Everyone bagged him for it, and now every fuckwit's on fucking BJJ Fanatics selling their system. So they can all go fuck themselves. But that's just a side note.
Fair enough.
Everyone's got a system for everything now. Before, everyone just had techniques before, but now it's like they think systems is the way they're going to sell their new thing. But
gotta have a system.
Gotta have a system. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you mean.
No one ever used the terminology system before Danaher started talking about systems, and then when he started talking about it, they all gave him shit about it. And then anyway, but I can't praise Jason Rao enough. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's in the game that knows the guy will say exactly the same thing. I
have heard recently a lot more people. I've heard his name start coming up with a lot more people talking about how he's kind of a hidden talent, or killer in the gym, and to look out for him just in a couple of different interviews in the last few months actually. So there definitely might be definitely a bit more media exposure coming his way probably. But yeah, so you've created that connection, which is really, you've really gone out of your way and had to persevere to do something like that from, the other side of the world, basically, to be able to make that bridge, that gap, which is huge. And I've not heard of anyone else going to those lengths to be able to do that. And especially
it doesn't make financial sense. It makes no financial sense. See, I'm not, and I've said to people, if you want to be rich, don't start a jiu-jitsu gym. Like, people think guys with a jiu-jitsu gym are rich because what they see on the outside is, there's a guy doing jiu-jitsu and making a living. He must be killing it. He's got, I counted on the mats 50 people and he's charging them, he's got this much money in his pocket. You're like, people have no idea about business, but that's a side topic again. But it's it doesn't make financial sense to do what I'm doing. I could make the same amount of money not doing this. So it's a lot. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of guys are not driven by anything unless it's going to result in money in their pocket. Mm-hmm. But for me, I would not have kept running a gym if I couldn't have run it to the level that I'm at. That's how my obsession works. And it's not about me. I can't stress enough. It's not about big noting me. It's not about that at all. But if the proof can be in the pudding that my guys go to a tournament and you see every one of my students from white belt to black belt doing a particular style of jiu-jitsu that's different to everyone else and they're submitting everybody, I'm happy with that. I can live. That's what I can live with. Sorry to cut in on you there, but that's why other people aren't doing this.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And so then, I mean, that added benefit from getting those, the face-to-face and the creating that connection, like, how much extra additional does that get for you other than just watching, say, the DVDs? Everyone can go on now, buy the Danaher DVDs. That's going to be going to be the system. Why should I just do that? And that's going to get me the Danaher system for a lot less. What's the added benefit?
Good question, because I asked myself the same question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I went to New York I started learning this stuff, I started to make a little sense of it. Because the other thing to remember is I didn't make inroads with Jason Rao because I was looking for some type of in to do this. This just kind of happened organically. Remember, nobody knows who Jason Rao is, even Belly still now. So me meeting Jason in the training room, it was just all purely, the word gets overused, but it was organic. It was, we met each other. I trained with this guy who I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, what is this? That makes no sense. And I saw him doing it to everybody. And I'm like, I need to know what this guy's doing. Like, so it was as simple as that. There was no ulterior, like me trying to, I'm going to get in here, I'm going to get to know that guy so I can try and learn his shit. It wasn't like that. We just got to know each other and go from there. But anyway, we start training, I start learning some stuff, and then next thing Danaher goes, tomorrow I've got my leg lock DVD coming out, my whole system's going to be on there. And I'm like, fuck. Is the cat out of the bag now? Like, that's what I was thinking. Just now that every retard now is gonna fucking have this information, and I've just tried so hard to gather this. I've been fucking gathering sticks from the tree, and then a bunch of timber just got dumped on the ground there, and the other guys just walk and pick it up. And
well, I remember at the time I went to the first seminar he did out here in Sydney, and that was when it was all still underground. No one knew this was he's given up some of the secrets, and he goes, if you ever see me release a DVD, it was like I'm hurting for money, or I need the money or something like that. It was still at that point. He's no way is he ever gonna put it out. He wants that competitive advantage.
Yeah.
But then obviously things have changed a lot since then. Now everything's getting put down. But so the DVDs come out. Then how did that? What was your thought process on from there?
So if something to consider is this: if that was my thought process, what's the thought process of the immediate team? Like, for them, it's got to be even. It's got to be tenfold, doesn't it? If I'm thinking. If I'm thinking, shit, this information that I thought was something that I was gathering that was quite rare is now not so rare because it's available to anybody that can either A, afford the money, or B, pirate it like plenty of people do. So what does the team think? And I spoke to Rao about it, and basically those guys aren't worried. First of all, it's John's information. And I thought, what it is? It's John's information. If he wants to give it, he's worked so hard to create all this. And as we know, jiu-jitsu, I've just said, it's not something people make a lot of money out of for how much time and expertise we have to acquire. Like, the same level of expertise we need to acquire in this to really do like at the level that some of us are doing it at. I don't know if it's fair, but I think it's fair to liken it to some high level stuff in the corporate world, like for how much time you put into things. I mean, you're a university guy. You probably see there's probably guys getting through university working less hard than guys that are studying for this sort of thing. Maybe
the amount of time you have to put into jiu-jitsu, all that is, it's a lot. It adds up. That's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought, I had to like slap myself and say, who am I to fucking kind of be a bit pissy that this guy's sold his own information? That was the first thing, right? So then I'm like, okay. So then the DVDs come out, and they became a useful tool for me as well, because there was a lot of just little. What John's done with the DVDs, particularly the main systems, like the Kimura, the back take, the leg locks, the triangles, the arm bars, he's given the kind of basics of the system, a couple of setups. He's given the preamble and the understanding of the positions, just a lot of good foundation stuff that people knew bits and pieces of, but him explaining it really. So what I'm trying to get at there, it wasn't enough that if people just grab John's DVDs, they're going to become better players, but they're not going to become Gary Toner or Gordon Ryan or Jason Rao or Nick Ronan or Frank Rosenthal. That's what I realized. I realized that that's not going to be it. So, and then the next thing I realized was that people actually don't. A lot of people, I should say, don't have the ability to sit down and, first of all, actually listen to everything he's saying and take it on board, because he does lecture very much like a university lecturer does. Now, as much as I'm likening jiu-jitsu to university, a lot of the guys doing this aren't people who are more academic based, but John delivers it in a more academic style. So I think there's a lot of these guys that are kind of like, oh, he talks too much. I just want to see the move and fucking. I mean, you probably heard guys say, I just want to see the moves. I kind of flick through and look at the.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's some of it I find myself hard to get through. It's very drawn out. Sometimes I'll speed it up. I'll put it on 1.2 speed and just I can get through it easy. Yeah.
See,
it's a tough watch sometimes.
Yes, so that works in my favor because I'm fucking half autistic. Because this is literally, I'm trying to be the very best at this. I want to understand everything he's saying. So I'm spending hours each day at the gym, sitting here intently looking at that, trying to understand why he's saying each thing and remember each thing. Because I need to also be able to teach it to people. So I will never teach something to somebody that I don't understand myself. I will never just regurgitate a technique to people that I remember the moves of, like many jiu-jitsu, I'm going to say in inverted commas, coaches do that. Like nowadays, everyone's a jiu-jitsu coach now. I won't do that. So I need, I've got to uphold my own kind of code of honor where I've got to understand this. I've got to immerse myself in it. So what the DVDs did was they kind of filled in some holes, and then with the stuff from Rao, it becomes like a paper mache, where eventually that one piece of paper that was nothing becomes something that in the end is usable and quite sturdy. And that's where it's getting to. And then it gets to a point where once you understand those basics of the systems, then it's all the extras, the setups, and the what if they do this. And that's where, Rao and I, get so much. We get so much further now with each session, because I have a pretty good understanding. I don't know if you froze on me, Sonny, or you've had a stroke. I'm not sure. Oh, no. Sonny Brown. Did you have a stroke, mate? You look like you're back.
Yep, I'm just back now. I think that was me.
Bloody northern suburbs.
Mate.
Guys. I was going to say, if you've had a stroke, I wouldn't go to the hospital now. You're better off going without it.
No, mate. Okay, we're back. We're back though.
I'm not sure
what happened, but
I'm not sure where we froze on. But I was where did we froze? Where was I up to when it froze?
So you were saying it was you were paper macheing it together from the Danaher and the Rao.
Yeah.
Basically the DVDs were give people, a broad overview, but there's still plenty of things that aren't covered in them that you can pick up.
There's still plenty of meat on the bone. There's plenty of meat on the bone. So I'm not saying that John holds back stuff, but what I'm saying is if you think a 10-hour DVD is going to give you John's back attack system, it's a little bit of broken thinking. It's just a little bit of broken thinking. You need to be right there in front of him, or basically as good of that. So and the fantastic thing for me is that Jason has a different style as well. So it's like the Danaher DVDs and information that he puts out actually bolsters me now, because I get that aspect, but I also get Jason's aspect from things. And Jason works on a lot of stuff himself, and there's guys like him and JC, like John Calistine, who, if you don't know who that guy is, he's another kind of unknown guy who, if we're being honest, is one of the best in the world, definitely at 135 or 145 pounds. He's another one where him and Rao are the two that I've trained with where I've never experienced anything like that as far as submission ability. Gordon Ryan obviously is at the top of the list. He's the best in the world. But you take Gordon aside from that, Jason and JC are just submission machines. And everything's so tight and so precise, and the way they think about things. And, I didn't mention it before. I've since been back to New York 2 more times now. And each time it's like I jump back on the treadmill and we're not starting from 0. We're at like 7. And the next time I went in, it was like we're starting at 10. And it's like we're just fucking going. And it's each time I've gone back there, my skills up more to where they're like, okay, this guy's actually a good training partner for us now. And
okay.
I'm not saying that I give either of those guys trouble, but my skills moved up to a point where they're like, okay, this guy's like kind of one of us now, and it would become. It's become less of me being the the retarded white belt, and now I'm kind of like in with the team a little bit, and that's been obviously even more helpful. So there's a whole bunch of things that have happened to where we're at now, which you couldn't just manufacture. Like I couldn't just assume that was all going to happen in the beginning. It's got there through a lot of hard work and a lot of time and a lot of study. And the only reason that they put the time in with me as well is because I'm like them. I'm totally obsessed with this, and I'm obsessed about the minute details, and it's an actual living for me. It's not a hobby. Yep. And I feel very I'm kind of proud of myself that I worked on that and got to that point, because it's not been easy, and it's obviously something that not many other guys in Australia have done. You've got Craig Jones, who's gone over. You've got
Isaac.
You got young Isaac Michelle, who's done that as well. But there's not that many. You got Ethan Thomas, who's gone a little bit as well. But there's not that many of us that have done it. There's the guys who have popped over for a week or two here and there, but that's not the same thing as immersing yourself. And it's fucking exciting, man, because I'm telling you, it's a different thing. And you understand that. But some of the guys listening are thinking to themselves, oh, yeah, whatever. Like, my coach is good. You should wrestle with my coach. Or, if my coach wrestled with Gary Tonin, or, the black belts at my gym, maybe, but unless I know those guys and have seen them do their thing, probably not. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm just speaking from a very fucking truthful position. And it's been shown on the highest level. It was really cool to kind of jump on board this train before the train was something. Like, it was cool to be on the leg lock train before it became a cool thing. I kind of don't like things once they're cool. I kind of wish I didn't have tattoos. I got tattoos before they became cool, and then everyone got a tattoo, and then I'm like, fuck, I wish I didn't have them. That's my thing. And it's nice that I got on this train. 2017 ADCC was a big validation for me. It was a matter of, okay, good. I knew this was the right direction, but that validation is obviously an important thing. And 2017 ADCC was a massive validation. Obviously, every submission grappling tournament between then and then last year, but then the 2019 ADCC finals was just, obviously a massive big tick for the whole Danaher school of teaching. So, I'm just excited to see where this keeps going, because it's crazy, and I can't say enough how, I'm at a level now where I feel very confident against good guys. And I'm not saying that in a cocky way. I'm just saying, like, I've gone with the best guys in the world. I feel very confident against, like, local good guys. But I'm not doing this to make myself better. Where I'm excited to see is where my team goes in the next year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what's exciting for me. Like, I'm really excited, for that. But anyway, I've been talking too much. Keep asking questions.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to see where that goes as well, because when I've gone out there and trained with you recently, won't go into specifics, but a certain thing in my game that I was doing and was just starting to develop, that I was getting a lot of success with a lot of different people. I went out there and you cut through it like a hot knife through butter, and I'm like, okay, there's something else going on here. But then the best thing was then rolling with all your your other students, is and their different skill levels, I could see that they too were going for the same thing that you had done to shut down my game. And I could see, the higher level they were, the sharper they were at doing it. And you could really see that progression. And I was like, that's cool. You could see how they're all, working the same thing, and they're all on the same path. And that was very good to see from a student base, to know that there was those levels of skill, but they were all putting together the same kind of system that is obviously a very successful system to be working. So I want to get into the the specifics of the private lessons that you do via Zoom, because obviously now everyone's been rushing around the last couple of weeks to figure out the best way to do things for the first time. But you've had the experience of doing it. So how did that develop for you? What have you found the best ways to do, you know, private lessons online, and what tips would you give people if they're trying to figure out how to do it themselves?
First of all, fuck you guys for trying to take my idea and learn information from other guys. Secondly, like I said, I like to be the only guy doing it. Now that everyone's doing it, it's like, it's not so cool anymore. Look, but you know what? I know what a grind this game of jiu-jitsu is, and I know what a grind it is for the athletes. And if they can make money from people doing this, I'm 100% all for it. So I would never stand in the way. If anyone came to me and was like, I want to do a lesson with Jason Rao, I would never be like, don't do that. It's my thing. I want everybody to go and do it privately. I want to blow that guy up so much that he's got everything he ever wants, you know. So that's tricky for me, but I want everyone to. And right now, you've got access to so many good guys that are literally saying on their Instagram, hit me up. I want to do it because they're in a position. So I don't use Zoom. I don't use Skype. I use FaceTime because let's praise the Apple overlords. I've got everything through Apple. So and Rao's on Apple as well. So it just worked. It was just a platform that I use and I know. What it allowed me to do was use my computer, my Mac, to call, and it meant I could use my phone for recording the session. So obviously, the first thing I'll say is do not record a session with someone unless you've got explicit permission from them to do that. There's nothing worse than trying to film or sneak filming someone, whether it's at a seminar, whether it's a private or whatever, if you don't have their permission, because that's their information that they're giving to you. And it's actually very rude to just assume you kind of own the rights to filming that. That's something that I really think is important. I mean, nowadays people seem to think they've got a right to fucking everything, but you don't. Like, that person worked very hard for that information. Secondly, and this is just like going through the disclaimer first. This is my disclaimer.
Yeah.
Don't gather the information and then put it on your Instagram the next day like it's your move. It's a fucking douchebag move, and you're a cocksucker for doing it. Okay? That's very important that people understand that. I hope you're allowed to swear on your channel, because
why not? Why not?
Have I just ruined your whole channel now?
I don't think so.
It's very important, but like you would have seen it. We've all seen it. People trying to show other people's techniques as if they are their own. If you look on my Instagram, you'll find barely any techniques. And if you do, and it's something someone else has shown me, I'll be giving them the credit for what it is. I hate people just regurgitating other people's stuff to try and get more followers for themselves. So I think just make sure you're using the information for the right reasons, I suppose. And if you plan on just blowing it up on your own Instagram, be very honest with the person you're getting it from and say to them, I'm going to be showing everyone else your stuff as if it's mine, and just see what they think about it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, let's assume you've done all your disclaimers and they're happy to actually teach you information. First of all, work out the big thing can be timings. When you're with international guys, obviously our timings are all over the shop. So the big thing that was always difficult with Jay and I is trying to work a time that would suit me and suit him, because he's busy, I'm busy. So that's the thing. Also, you really have to have an uke at your end, uke training partner, whatever you want to call it. Yep. You need one. The sessions I've done with him without an uke have been good information-based sessions where I just asked him information. But as soon as we get to a point where it's like, okay, this is what I'd do in that situation, it's very difficult when we've just got to talk through it. As you know, jiu-jitsu is quite complex, and especially some of the stuff you're probably going to do with a better guy, it's not going to be just like an armbar from mount, just put your leg here. But even if you've never seen an armbar from mount before and then someone tried to just talk you through it without physical, there's limitations to that. So, I would say definitely have an uke. Make sure the timings are right, so you're all ready to go. I would say definitely respect that their time is valuable. You're going to them because they have information for you. Don't book it and then can it 5 minutes before it. Don't have them wait for an hour. All that stuff is bad, and purely expect that person to never deal with you again. So if you have someone like a Jason Rao, for instance, don't book him in for a 10 o'clock session and then at 11:30 you're like, sorry man, I kind of got sidetracked.
Yep.
All those sort of things. The same sort of respect you probably should show anyone, but I think because it's online, people maybe think that it's just they can get away with certain liberties, but all the same things apply to us being in person. We just happen to be doing it over a connection, and especially if you actually would like this to be a ongoing thing. Obviously, if you burn it all in the first one, they're never going to deal with you again. So definitely have an uke. I would say have a list of prepared questions. If you're paying good money, which you will be if you're going to someone who's decent, if you're not paying good money, maybe you should consider why you're doing a private lesson with them. You're going to be, you know what I mean? Anyone that's actually worth learning from should be relatively expensive because they're a specialist in their trade. On a side note, do not try and haggle people on their prices. Don't try and ask for a discount. If you can't afford it, don't go to that person for a private lesson. That's disrespectful. If they value their time at a certain figure, I think that's another thing that's really important. Like, you're going to them because of obviously for a reason. You're not going to them just because you found them in the on Facebook. Like you're going to them because you know their background. So make sure you've got a list of questions of techniques, either positions. Or there's nothing worse than going to the private. Just show me the cool stuff you did to submit this guy, and maybe that they'll go with that, but you won't get the most out of it. Like I think. But I'm a very organized person. Maybe some people aren't like that. But the people who aren't like that are maybe less likely to be doing these type of sessions as well. So definitely have a list of questions, or at least like a general direction. If you're going with someone good who's good at this type of thing, you might be able to go, look, I don't know much about reverse De La Riva. Could you give me a bit of a crash course? If the guy you're going with is good, he should be able to go, boom, I can, if you ask me that, I could speak to you for 3 hours without taking a breath, and you would get a lot of information out of it. So at least have a direction you want to go, whether it's written down or whatever. Make sure that you've talked with whoever you're doing it with on how you're going to process a payment. Obviously you're not physically in front of them, so I think PayPal or any type of money transfer thing, anything where the money immediately goes to them. I think it's very unfair to be like, oh, look, I'll bank transfer you to it and maybe you get it in 4 days or something. I don't think that's appropriate because they gave you their time on this specific day. And especially if they don't know you, it might even be fair to pay them before you start the lesson on the first couple of times until there's a build-up of trust because, they're giving you information. Like, especially when we're talking online, it might be like, let's say someone came to me for a Skype lesson or whatever, and he's from Japan. Like, for all I know, he does a session, I never hear from him again. Then I just blew my private hourly rate on the guy that just, and he got information out of me. Yep. So I would say, like, it might even be fairer in the beginning if you don't have a close relationship with the person that you maybe prepay for the session, or maybe you even prepay for a few sessions to show good faith. I think all that's important. Like, you'll notice a lot of what I'm saying is about respecting the guy because it's his information he's giving you. That's not a right for you. Like, because so much information is given now, I think people think it's just a right that everyone's information is theirs.
Yep.
Like, I have this weird, it's a little bit of a, what's the word I'm after? Not a diatribe, a little bit of a, the word's gone out of my mind.
Dogma?
Tangent. A little bit of a tangent. Sorry.
Tangent.
A little bit of a tangent. But, I kind of, it's like a super popular thing in the jiu-jitsu community for people to pirate everyone else's information. There's like, I've got like 50 different instructionals on a hard drive here, and everyone's like, oh yeah, give me that. Like, we've all either received that or seen people do it, and it kind of makes me feel gross when I'm now immersed in the community, and I know how hard people work to create something, and I know how little money they make from jiu-jitsu. And then people think it's their right to like own their information because their buddy, ripped it off the internet. Same sort of thing with these lessons. If you're going to do private lessons with people, respect that that's their information and make sure you're doing the right things through it. If you're doing it to make yourself better, or in my case, to try and teach my students, I was very upfront with Jason when I was teaching this, and he was more than happy for that to be the case. But like I said, you won't see me on Instagram showing techniques that Jason Rao's shown. You'll never see me show a technique that he says to me is something he's working on or something. You'll never see that. And I would have never got to a position where I have his trust if I'd done that. So, if you plan on just doing a one and go and just burning the guy, that's up to you. But I don't think that's right. So I would say just if make sure that, there's a level of trust between you in that regard, then you're going to actually be able to have follow-up sessions as well. And but yeah, if you make sure you've got Nuki, make sure your timings are good, and then stick to the timing. If you guys agree to an hour, don't try and push it out to an hour 15, an hour 20, because you might also find that they might not feel comfortable to kind of like make a hard call at the end of it. Like I think you need to look at the time you guys start, and then either set a timer or whatever, and just say on the end of that time, okay, yep, that's our hour, man. I think it's not fair that they should have to kind of pull you up at the end of it and go, hey, we've gone over this time. Like, again, that's just coming back to respecting that guy who's giving you the time and information. I know all that seems very, very much like I'm talking about the other guy a lot more, but he's the one giving you the information. So I think you've got to really respect that. And then, if you were lucky enough that you could record the session, you then need to go back through. You need to study that. You need to, I catalog everything I've got. I couldn't, unless you're an autistic savant, you're not going to be able to just retain things immediately. Even things, I watch sessions I've done with Jason 2 years ago, and I'll be like, fuck, I didn't remember that particular thing till 6 months later. It didn't become like he's talking about to me there, and I look like he's talking to me in Swahili. Yeah. And it's not till 6 months later that I'm like, finally, that's just a thing now. So the other thing is, have very realistic expectations that a 1 hour session is not going to make you into Gary Tonin or Gordon Ryan or Jason Rao, or whoever it is that, you're trying to aim towards. Like, have realistic expectations of what you're going to get out of this. So if your list of questions is 25 techniques long and you're just trying to be a technique collector, you might find as well you're not going to get as much out of it. You need to really understand the why. So it all comes down to how people learn and how you learn. But that was kind of how it's worked for me. But it's got to be that crossover, that paper mache effect where, like, I've done so many lessons with Jason where we've talked about the same technique 15, 20 times. And over time, there's also evolution of techniques. There's techniques we talked about in 2017 that now we don't even do, Yep. So you've got to be willing as well that there's going to be things put on the cutting room floor. And that's what I'm saying, where in the beginning, I was kind of like, everyone's got this access to information now. But then I kind of remind myself there's not many people willing to go to the level they need to get to the point to where you need to get this to actually a very usable thing. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Because, at the time when Danaher put his stuff out, it was like, okay, cat's out of the bag. But then I know a lot of people still haven't watched it, any of it, or, haven't sat down, and it's like, oh, okay. I thought when there was so little available, it seemed like anything that we could find was like, oh, this is the gold. And then once he kind of put it all out, and there's just so much out there now that I know, plenty of people just, they're not going to bother sitting down for the 10 hours or whatever it takes to get through one, and just, haven't seen it all. So it's still not like everyone's, seen everything. And that's, sometimes I got to remind myself that, where I'm like, I'll be sitting in a room and I'm like, I guess I might just, I'll show the old way of doing something, because, I haven't got the new Danaher way down yet. I'm just, this is the way I know. But in my head, I'm thinking, all these students here, they've all probably seen the latest stuff, and they're thinking, why is he showing some old technique? But it's, probably a lot of people haven't just had the time to
probably,
do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Most guys are also doing jiu-jitsu as a hobby, and this is something that I totally understand. Most of my students, basically none of my students are making money out of jiu-jitsu. I barely make money out of jiu-jitsu. Like, I can't stress this enough to people. Everyone that thinks you're going to be rich for opening a jiu-jitsu gym, have a good look into it before you move down that path, right? So most people doing jiu-jitsu are hobbyists. Most people are coming in because they enjoy it, they want to have fun, and they want to be good at something. And, we all get that bug and we end up going from there. But you've got to kind of realize that as a coach. So I've got to understand it. I've got to understand it to the nth degree where I can break it down for all the different levels of guys as well. And it's not fair for me to sit here. It would be very cocky of me to sit here and say, I understand Danaher's teachings, because once you sit in front of that guy, no one understands Danaher's teachings. When I say understands, not because of his just because his depth of knowledge is so good. You'll never understand martial arts like John Danaher does, because he's a different character. He's a once in a lifetime sort of guy. There's plenty of us that can try and kind of learn a little bit of his thought processes and try to kind of go and that's what guys are doing, and that's going to help for other people. But you're never going to be John Danaher. But if I can understand it enough where I can explain to a white belt maybe a little better way to do a mount escape than maybe the way that I was shown initially, or explain a braking mechanic for a heel hook a little better, that's all beneficial. And then just that, I keep bringing it back to that paper mache thing of just doing it over time and understanding, and it becomes something. It's something that most guys in my training room, even, it's taken years for them to get to that point where they start to make sense. And they have that kind of they have that moment where it comes together for them, where they're pairing it together. Like some of the blues, the purples, and definitely all the browns, they can flow the things together, but they're the guys in the training room the most. That's why they're at the top end of the room. They're the guys that are coming every night, not once a week. So it's a long burn. It's a long burn. I don't worry anymore about the excess of information out there, because most people aren't going to take it on. And most people, like I said to you, most people have got a hard drive sitting there with all John Danaher's DVDs that they bootlegged, and most of them, it's like they've been given so much good stuff they don't even know what to do with it. And it's like, I've got it all. One day I'll watch it, and they started watching, this is fucking pretty deep. I'll just watch a couple of techniques. But if you just pick techniques out of the DVDs, that might be more useful to you than nothing, but it's not going to be useful to you to the point where you're going to be like a grappler like the guys at Henzo's. And here's the thing. Most people have never experienced that. So they don't know what they're missing out on. That's the other thing. Unless you've experienced that, or a poor man's version of that, like me, for instance, unless you've experienced something like that, you don't necessarily have that moment where you realize how good that information is. You know what I'm saying with that?
Yeah.
It's just another instructional. Andre Gaval's got an instructional. This guy's got an instructional. Yeah. It's a different thing. Their ability to submit people, and the ADCC will show you that. Nobody had a higher submission rate. And that's why we all love jiu-jitsu. None of us love jiu-jitsu because we want to be able to pin a guy. We all love jiu-jitsu because we want to strangle a guy or break his arm or leg. That's why we enjoy it. Else we would all do wrestling. I'm not talking about on wrestling either, because I know you're a pundit of the rest of the
what's wrong with the pin, mate? What's wrong?
Yeah, nothing wrong with the pin. But the reason we're attracted to jiu-jitsu is because it's so final. There's that I broke your arm, I made you give up before I break your arm. That's why we all love it. Yeah. Like, you get that first tap as a white belt, and you're like, fuck, I'm like a superhero. Like, this is crazy. And until you experience their ability to do that, especially, remember, I went into their training room as a black belt. I went into the Henzo's for the first time as a black belt, and definitely not a bad black belt. There's some average black belts around. There's actually a lot of average black belts around, if I'm being honest. I'm definitely not, like, I was a good black belt, not the best. I was a good black belt, and I went into their training room and felt like a moron. I had Nick Ronan, who was a purple belt at the time, same weight as me. If you don't know who Nick Ronan is, he's a guy who trains out of Sarah's and Danaher's. Absolute phenom. Actually just got his black belt, which was great to see. I was sick of getting beat up by a guy who had a brown belt around his waist. But I went in there, and he was a purple belt, and he pumped me. Like, he submitted me 2 or 3 times, and I was like, the fuck, I just got bashed by a purple belt. This is embarrassing. I'm a complete failure. And then as I trained more, I realized, okay, they're doing a different thing to me. We're not doing the same thing here. Like, there's no point comparing my black belt to their, because this is a different thing. And that's where the obsession just went, you know. And people listening to this are just thinking that I'm drinking the Danaher Kool-Aid and whatever. I'm a very realistic person. I don't fall for bullshit. I don't believe in crystals or fucking. I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in anything unless you can show it to me and you can give me a very good proof, series of proofs. You're not going to hoodwink me. Mm. I'm not being hoodwinked here. I'm dealing very much in reality, and that's why it's so exciting for me, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And you can probably hear it, like it's a passion, you know.
Oh, for sure. And I sometimes, think. Well, I remember I brought up, what is it, the outside Sankaku or something like that, or we were just talking about different styles, and I asked, what do you think of that? And you've kind of said, yeah, it's fine. It works for some people, but the Danaher guys they've got more runs on the board, and I'm like, yeah, fair point. There is that. They are the best team in the world at the moment. And it's, no gi. Why would we not just focus time, just trying to do what you're doing? I mean, I find it hard to poke, holes in your method.
Logic.
The logic of just like, these are a top team. You've thrown yourself after it to learn as much as you can, to bring it back out here to Australia, and that seems like that's the best thing to do. That's got to be, one of the best ways you could be ensuring that the level of instruction that you're giving at your school is up there with the best in the world, even with that massive geographical distance. Because that was, like always when we train MMA back in the day, or, and probably now it's like, there was always that belief that you have to go overseas to train with the best. Like, you can get to somewhere in Australia or so, you get to a certain level, but obviously you got to go to America to train MMA, or, you got to go to Brazil to train jiu-jitsu. And I'm sure there's obviously still benefit in doing that, but what you've been able to still, start to develop while still being on the other side of the world, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's very admirable and commendable to take that steps, the steps that you have to be able to do that. I think it's, I think it's a great path forward and a good example for people who might be thinking, what can they actually do to improve or to get those techniques beyond just getting the DVDs. And so for your teaching style itself, how do you think that has impacted just your actual like explanation of techniques? Because it might, I always thought you were always good, but I reckon you would have feel you've improved. How do you feel that's brought it all together for you to be able to give to the students then?
Yeah, so the reason I got into like running my own academy is because I like jiu-jitsu. That was the first thing. I liked jiu-jitsu. I had a passion for it. And it was never something that I wanted to do. Like, I think a lot of guys start their own jiu-jitsu school because they want to be the guy standing in front of the group. Like, we've all seen that guy before. Even you could name the other martial arts as well.
Yeah.
We've all seen
few
that.
People come to mind where it's the angle is to get in front of the group. It's not just to do jiu-jitsu or get the black belt, and they've got that goal from an early stage, and you can tell.
Yeah, so that was not my motivating factor whatsoever. I really enjoyed jiu-jitsu. I didn't even realize I liked teaching people until I had a job where I started being in an instructor role, in a teaching role. I was a weapons and officer survival instructor where I teach people firearm stuff, and I teach people defensive tactics, and I teach people, a bunch of other things. And I started to realize that, and this sounds a little cocky, but I realized that I had a bit of some people have got a little bit of a natural skill. It's definitely something you can work on. So people who aren't natural presenters can become reasonable to okay presenters, but some people are pretty good to start with and then can become quite good. when teaching adults, it's not just about your level of knowledge. You've got to be good at how you deliver that to people. You've got to be good at reading people, reading a room, and it's different teaching, one-on-one than it is teaching 60 people. There's a whole bunch of things that go into it, right? So I kind of just hit this thing where I realized what I was good at. Like, I think a lot of us do jobs in our life, and some people never even get to experience or get to have their job being something that they're actually good at. There's people who are great artists or good at painting or good at making music or good at fucking digging holes or whatever. But a lot of people are not always doing what they're really good at. And I don't want to use the word lucky because I made all this happen. It wasn't because of luck. But I'm doing every day something I feel I was, this is something I'm best at, is imparting knowledge to people. So I've always felt confident in imparting knowledge, but I need to have that knowledge. I can't, I'm not a showman. So some guys are instructors where they're showmen, right? They actually don't need to have any knowledge. They're going to put on a show. The people are going to think the show was great. They're going to walk away going, that was fun. Fuck, that guy's cool. He's really likable. But does that guy really have a deep, deep knowledge base? You've got to have kind of both as a very good instructor, as far as I'm concerned. You've got to have a very deep knowledge base and understanding mixed with a delivery method that is appealing to people. And I'm not saying there's only one style. I think there's many styles. I think that's an individual thing. You shouldn't try and copy or replicate someone else. You've got to have your own thing. So I don't try and teach the guys how Danaher teaches, but I definitely will use terminology he uses. I'll definitely use certain things because, well, that makes perfect sense. As far as nomenclature is concerned, if something's been given a name, well, let's utilize that name, especially with jiu-jitsu. That was a massive issue with jiu-jitsu for so long, is that nothing had a name. It was like, oh, just do that overwrap, the thing where we grab over the arm and just do that grip, or everything was, as you know, everything was kind of very vague, and everyone had their own kind of different ideas on it. John has been very good at giving every part a name. Like nomenclature is a good word for that. And once you understand the nomenclature and you understand the concepts, I found the rest of the teaching quite easy. I feel confident teaching to a group. I feel good at differentiating people's level of skill, so I feel confident delivering to a white belt, and in the same way I feel confident delivering to a black belt, and I feel like in between I can kind of scatter the information enough where everyone gets what they need. That's something that I actually enjoy. I enjoy that art side of it, because that's the side where a lot of people struggle. There's even guys, and we've seen it in jiu-jitsu, for instance, who are masterminds, they're phenomenal. They understand the stuff. But if you had to try and get 60 people to sit down and listen to that guy night in and night out, it's just not going to happen. Either he doesn't have the ability to do that, or they're not going to follow him. Teaching adults is a difficult thing. Adults are coming to you because they want to, not because they have to. Teaching school children, so basing your tuition on how a school teacher taught you, I think is a broken fucking mindset, because they're teaching young people who have to be there. And if you talk to most people hated their school teachers. Most school teachers, this is not an attack on school teachers, but a lot of teachers aren't actually very good at getting to that base. You know what I'm saying there?
Yeah, well, I'd say like the massive difference is what you've identified in that the adults want to be there, whereas with school children, you might have to spend a lot of the time just getting them to pay attention, or just, getting them to listen, getting them to settle. And then you're lucky if you get that, and then you can deliver some information. Whereas the adults, they're there waiting for you to give them the information that, no one's talking or, interrupting. They're waiting for you, and you better be able to deliver. Keep that. Yeah, you better be able to deliver. Otherwise, they, start thinking about what else they got on, or maybe they'll go try CrossFit or something else. It's a different level of attention.
Or they go to the guy down the road that teaches jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
and he speaks to them more. So what I am confident in is that I'm delivering the very best technical knowledge mixed with the very best delivery of that knowledge, if that makes sense. That's kind of like what I'm trying to do here, and I'm very confident with that. There's not a thing that sounds cocky. but I'll say that in a cocky way because that's something that I've worked very hard for, and it's a skill that not a lot of people have. Else there would be a lot of brilliant coaches, which is not. And that's not me having a shot at the other guys. There's plenty of other guys teaching jiu-jitsu that I love, but I don't think they're the best coaches, and I don't think they're guys that I would want to get taught by. There's actually a very small handful of guys who I would like to get taught by. So every day for me is about understanding the information and knowledge to the best degree that I can. So I spend a disproportionate amount of time studying. I very much treat it like a job. I think it's easy to kind of fuck off because it's easy to be like, there's no one here telling me during the middle of the day to sit down. Like I teach a morning class and I've got the middle period of the day. Obviously, you've got all your general business things you have to do, but there's no one that sits down and makes me go and study or watch a match or come up with more questions to ask Jason Rao or, whoever, or sit down and study, a Danaher DVD, for instance. There's no one making you do that. It's easy enough to fuck off. So I really make myself accountable on that. I look at it like a job in that regard. I'm here at the end of the night after everyone's gone, and I'm probably watching another half an hour or an hour of either matches and not watching them for entertainment. I'm watching them for why are certain things happening. So, I've got an obsession with it. I've always had an obsession, but it only becomes more and more. And because now I'm in a position where it's literally my career, I can just allow it to completely go overtime. As long as I balance, my home life with that, obviously that's very important. I think I find it interesting, some of these guys who don't have that balance of home life, some of these jiu-jitsu players that it's all they've got. And I feel like maybe that can be a bit much for them sometimes and it gets to be too much. I think you definitely need to be able to have that kind of downtime. But if I'm, at stage where I'm working, like I'm switched on and I'm trying, I feel that I have I've got to uphold something to my students. Like if they're coming to me and paying me for a service, I want to be very confident that I'm giving them the very best I can. I would never just dial in a session. I would never teach them some technique I saw on YouTube that day like plenty of people do. I would never do that to them. And that's why I'm very confident in, asking someone to come and pay me to teach them jiu-jitsu because I'm going to give you the very best that I can. And not the best I can, the best that you're going to get as well in probably Australia. And I say that, confidently. My goal from the beginning of this was not just to open a rinky-dink martial arts academy in the local hall and maybe I get 10 guys and I can be their master. That's not my thing. I want to try to have the very best crop of students, and the way I do that is by giving them, unbelievable information. And that's what fucking drives me every day. And I don't know if that answers that particular question you said, but it's definitely impacted the way that I teach, the way the information I've learned.
Yeah.
He hasn't changed how I deliver. I think John doesn't, because he hasn't taught me how to deliver information. I've obviously watched but I watch many different people. I don't have to watch a jiu-jitsu guy to learn how to deliver. I can watch, I don't like politicians, but I even find myself critiquing how they deliver a speech, for instance, right? Like, in this job role I was doing, another thing we did was actually teach other people on how to become instructors themselves. So because I worked in the training unit, our job role was to actually teach other people to become instructors. And that's where you learn. First of all, not everyone's cut out to actually instruct other adults. It's whether they really want it or not. Some people just don't have that ability. But the other thing is it's definitely a learnt skill, and it's something you can work on. And you've got to be able to critique each other. Like we as instructors would do that each other in a training unit. We'd be like, a guy'd finish a lesson and maybe I've sat in and watched it and I'd be like, man, like you fucking lost them there, or what was going on here? Or maybe they'd say to me, you've got a tick where you're saying this over and over and over and let's fix that. And I think it's like a constant thing you work on. So I'm always being very, strict on myself as far as my delivery. If I know the information well, I'm at a level now where I've instructed enough where I'm confident I can deliver that to you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you're saying, because that was one thing I know, like your delivery style isn't a copy of Danaher's, and that's what I kind of felt like. It's it's not that removed from how you always delivered, but obviously that level of information's a lot grown a lot more, and yeah, that ability to be confident that you've got from putting in all that extra work to actually get that information, I can see how that's just going to help, giving you that confidence to deliver that to the students. So that makes it's going to make a big difference to take those extra steps to give that confidence to then have that transfer over to your students. I think
it's got to be confidence. So there's two types of confidence. There's confidence that's founded and there's confidence that's not founded. Unfounded confidence, they're the worst guy you can ever come across.
There's a lot of that in martial arts too.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that just in people in general. Yeah. There's guys with levels of confidence where you go, you have no right. You have no right to have that much confidence in this specific thing. And we've seen it plenty in martial arts because we're using that as their example.
Sometimes I wish I could be that confident with some things, and I'll be like, I haven't put the reps in on this, or I'm not a few things I don't quite know about that, so I'll hold off. But it's definitely better to have that developed confidence than, as you're saying, the delusional confidence.
Yeah, it's got it. Like, my confidence is not because I'm some type of con artist who needs everybody just to look at me as the guy. Like, I can't stress that enough, and that's something that can be a trip up for people in these types of positions. Anytime you're in an instructor role, or anytime, and this is just basic monkey shit, like, the monkeys all have an alpha. They got the one, and for some reason it's in our DNA where people want to be that monkey that all the other monkeys look at. And if you're doing it because you want to be the monkey that all the other monkeys look at, you're not. That should not be your motivating force, right? Not for instructing, I don't think. If let's say you're a showman, or let's say you're a professional fighter, and you want to do it because you want everyone else to look, hey, that's actually a very good thing to have, because you're not, the pressure of it all is probably less likely to bother you because you want everyone looking at you and putting that heat on you. But as a coach, if you just want to be the guy in the front of everyone and you're just trying to kind of hoodwink everyone into believing that you're this guy that maybe you're not, I feel like that will get caught out in the end anyway, and it won't be a successful thing. Like, everything that I've done here is just been based purely on just, sounds stupid, but just on hard work. It's just literally just been hard work and confidence in the right direction. Not unfounded confidence. And I'm very happy, and I'm not talking like I've achieved, like I've just run over the finish line. There is no finish line. I would never. Every day I'm like, every day I roll, I'm like, fuck, I want to be better. Why am I not better at this? Why when I train with Jason, can I just not move out of that position? And when I put someone else, and then it just starts back on that thing. Okay, there must be, we're both humans with the same mechanical abilities. There must be something in this, and what is that? And if I can understand that, I can teach the other guys that, and they're going to be better. And that just keeps going. This thing just never stops.
Yeah.
And it's so exciting, and it's such a cool thing to be part of, and it's such a positive thing too. Like, teaching what I run here at the academy is such a positive thing. Like, at the moment, I'm in the worst position business-wise that you could be. I literally cannot open my business because it's illegal. Like, I can't do anything. And the amount of support from these people, you don't even realize how much it's like helping people. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. There's sometimes an undercurrent with I see online where people will just compare jiu-jitsu to like any other service, like you're not happy with the instructor, or just there, you can just stop paying and move somewhere else, which is fine. Everyone's got that too, but everyone's got that right, and by all means, use it if you feel you have to. But I look at it like, it's not just another service, because I've been with my phone company for 10, 15 years. There's no one at the phone company that's ever invited me to their wedding or rings me up for drinks. It's like you create different kinds of connections with people over that length of time that makes it different from other commercial businesses. that you get involved in. And I think that's, it's at least it's unique from what I've experienced, and seems to make it worth it.
I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. Like, I'm a very and maybe I am half autistic. Like, I'm not an overly emotional guy. I'm not devoid of emotion, but I don't have my heart on my sleeve type thing. But like the outpouring of support that I got in this shitty time, and people just wanting to help and just offering, I was like, this is unreal. Like, I've always been trying to do the best thing by these people, but at the end of the day, I still understood that they were paying me, and that, they're paying me to teach them that. So I don't expect anything else from them.
Yeah.
But them to offer and say how much like that this means to them, and you start to realize, okay, this means more to people. Like, so, for me, my main focus is giving them the very best quality of technique, because if they're going to do jiu-jitsu, well, they have the right. I have a right to give, not a right. I have a
responsibility.
I have a responsibility to give them the very best. I wouldn't feel comfortable if I knew that the guy down the road was delivering levels of training like I am, and I was delivering something subpar to that. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I would be in a position where I was very conflicted. Luckily, I'm not in that position, but I thought that was all I owed them, and I thought that was all that they were happy to receive from me. But there's a lot more that goes with it. There's so much positive stuff that this does for people that I think I realized, but I think this whole latest thing has really cemented it for me, where you realize you were giving people more than just how to break someone's arm and how to just strangle someone. Like, there's people that come here who probably get the most amount of positive input in their life that they do anywhere. They probably go to a job they fucking hate. Maybe they don't have much of a family, or maybe the family they do, they kind of don't get along that well with, or whatever. Like, this could be a place where they feel safe and no, I don't mean safe like a safe space, but they walk in and just feel good. Like, they walk in, no one's hassling them out about any of their daily shit. They can come in here, have some fun, they feel good, they walk. There's like so many positive things around it, and I think that's it's not something that I lose track of, but it's something that I think is important to remind ourselves, especially as a coach, that you're probably more to some of these people than just a guy that gives them information on how to break someone's legs. And that's the side of it that I didn't get into this because I wanted to be someone's life coach. But if that's a little bit of a side product where guys are taking good information from the teachings or whatever, well, that's fantastic. That's a really, really cool thing.
Yeah, and it's that positive benefit is so great and I think there has to be that there to drive people to keep coming back, because there's a lot of easier things, easier ways to get a workout. Yep. There's lots of other, you can just go do whatever burpees in the park if you want to get a sweat on or
that's
something.
That's illegal as well, isn't it?
That's illegal.
Is that legal?
No, you can
I'm very
do that.
confused as to what's illegal.
It is. But, if people want to get fit, there's other things they can do. If people want to do another sport, there's other games they can play. If they're looking for entertainment, the world's your oyster for stuff like that. So there has to be that little bit extra that draws people into such a tough sport, such a hard way to actually get those.
It tests your character. It's going to be character testing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, you can scoot through life without really having your character tested. You can pretty much, once you come out of school, you could scoot through the rest of your life doing some miserable job and never really test yourself. But you come into a jiu-jitsu academy, you're going to get tested on the mat that first day. Someone's going to physically best you. Someone's going to, maybe you're going to fit. There's a whole lot of character testing. And then maybe you do your first tournament and you're super nervous and you're freaking out. No one's making you do this. You're doing this. And it kind of builds this certain type of person. And so you can't put your finger on why there's so many cool people we kind of come across in this industry. But I think there seems to be something to do with all that mixed together of information that has this kind of similar output each time, doesn't it?
Yeah. I definitely can't put my finger on it exactly, like why that is, but it's that pushing, putting yourself out there, pushing yourself to the edges a bit, that constant level of, of problem solving and thinking that does go on.
Yeah.
And it just seems to, create those positive outcomes. I think for people that are looking for it, if that's what you want to get out of it, I think it's there to give you that positive experience back.
Sounds like we're doing an ad for jiu-jitsu now, Sonny Brown.
Jiu-jitsu.
No, if you want to sign up, you got to come down here and you got to pay us a whole bunch of money. No, that's not.
That's good, man. I think that's a good place to wrap this one up. I think it's finished on a nice.
Well, if anyone does
positive,
if anyone does want to come and learn jiu-jitsu, Sonny Brown, they need to come to Sydney West Martial Arts. They need to come down here. They need to do a trial class and see if they enjoy strangling or getting strangled. Probably getting strangled on their first day, and go from there. But anyway, they can find us from there. Look, thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, thank you, Luke. It's been an excellent chat, and I'm looking forward to when all this stuff dies down. I can get back out there and get some rounds in. Yeah,
get my hands around like this, like a rope choke. Why do they do that in movies, right? If I'm going to choke someone, the rape choke is like one of the worst because it's only like the strength of my hands trying to push into the front of your throat, or from behind it's even worse because I'm just trying to push on the side of your carotid. What the fuck?
That I'll let that one fly with the teaching with the teaching degrees going on. I won't go into specifics on that one, mate.
Look, whatever you want to call this choke. What do you call that choke? Do you have a good name for it?
Zombie choke, I think. Yeah.
The two-handed choke.
The two-handed choke.
There's better ways to strangle people, is what I want to say.
There's better ways to strangle people.
I'm not advocating rape. That's clearly not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that's not a very good way to strangle someone. Anyway, Sonny, it's been great talking to you, mate.
I'm going to chop that bit out on my one.
Of course you will. I won't chop it out on my one because we'll be rolling all the way through.
Yeah, no, that's fine, mate. That's fine.
You're a good man, Sonny Brown.
Good stuff, mate. Let's chat again sometime. And